Welcome back, everyone. This time I'm going to take you along as I put together a slab order, get it dried, and get it shipped out. I get a lot of questions about like what happens to the slabs after they're cut, and after they've been sitting, and all of that stuff. So hopefully we'll answer some of those questions in this video today, and just give you a little more behind-the-scenes look at what it takes to go from a stack of slabs that's just sitting out here to something that is ready to use and off to a customer. So the way that I handle the inventorying of slabs is all of my inventory essentially is stored in boule form outdoors, as you've seen them as they come off the saw. I typically do not dry anything or have anything taken to final drying until there is a buyer lined up for that slab. So as slabs are being shown in the videos and as people are interested in purchasing some slabs or some cuts of some logs at some point, I will take a deposit or take a reservation, however you want to put that on that slab. And then once I have enough slabs that have deposits or reservations or whatever, then I will go through, pull all of those, have them all dried as a single batch. And then the customer can either pick them up if it's a smaller order, or they can be shipped if it's a larger order. This prevents me from having to inventory dried material. The problem with inventorying dried stuff is that obviously it takes up more space in a limited amount of space. The amount of conditioned space that I have is not infinite. Well, neither is technically the outdoor space I have, but the outdoor space is orders of magnitude more spacious than the conditioned space inside my barn and previously inside my warehouse. And that's really the crux of it. Once the stuff is dried, you don't really want to leave it sitting in an unconditioned space because it will just reacclimate to the outdoor environment, not the indoor environment where these pieces will be going into in some house or some business somewhere, which is going to be fully conditioned. So you end up with two problems: the problem of space and just having those things occupy space that could be used for something else, and you also have the problem of keeping these slabs in a climate-controlled environment. So that's what I've been doing for several years now. It works out really well for me. I don't have to inventory stuff that's already dried. I don't have to speculatively dry stuff and then hope that it sells through and then be stuck with a slab that nobody wants to buy that's taking up space. And then lastly, it just works out better for my time and my schedule. I can go through and do slab sales in batch form instead of doing them individually over time. So this first one that I'm digging through is the log I cut after I made the bed extensions on my saw. It's silver maple. It's, I think it was like 36 inches in diameter, and it's a little over 14 feet long. So these are some pretty big slabs. Yeah, I'm glad I waited to get back to this because I'm surprised how crazy this thing is. This whole side of the tree, actually over here too, there's like this compression figure thing coming all the way down the tree. So it kind of looks kind of splotchy or whatever, these kind of lines here. But that's all figure all the way down. So you got like these two bands of figure on the outside of the normal wood section here. And then we got our crazy crotch thing going on down here. So that's slab number 5. Back before I had any equipment, I would do all of this manually. So I would dig through every stack, pull out the slabs that were sold, and then restack and resticker everything. And that would have taken me like a full day or two to pull an entire batch worth of slabs out. Now with some equipment, this is significantly quicker and significantly easier. And having two machines makes it even more easy because you have, kind of like two sets of hands essentially helping you out. I don't get as much exercise though, which is sort of the downside. But it's a lot faster, and I can move on to other things sooner, which is nice. So as I'm going through the stacks, you can see on the end of the slabs I have some initials. Those are the initials of the buyer. So I'm getting those out, and I'm also making sure I bring enough to fully fill the kiln chamber. I've shown my friend Eric's vacuum kiln in the past, and we'll see it later in this video again. But one of the caveats of using it, or of using that style of kiln with the plates, is that every layer needs to be fully filled. So because these are a little over 14 feet long, I need to fill about 3.5 feet, 4 feet of empty space at the end of each row. Each row is 18 feet long. So I'll bring some fillers with me, and that will include the slab on the bottom here since it's kind of narrow. This will end up getting chopped into 4-foot lengths and then put perpendicular to the other slabs to fill the dead space at the end of the row. The initials on the end of the slabs, they correspond to Alan and Wink. They had purchased slabs from me in the past, and in doing so, we found out that they're only about an hour from each other. So I introduced them a few years ago, and they become friends. And as part of this next purchase that they were making, they actually decided to come out together and look at everything in person. And this is actually the second load that I am sending out to them this year. They had reserved several other slabs, and I had all that stuff dried last fall. Since they wanted to make the trip out here to visit, I held off on shipping all of those other things until they were here, and we went through all the stuff they ordered. I think they actually added a few more things to the pile, and they helped get it all palletized and ready to go. And while they were here, we also took a look at some of the other things that I had sawn in the meantime since getting that other stuff dry that they were interested in as well. It of course ended up being a really fun about day and a half of digging through wood, getting things stacked, getting things prepared. But more excitingly and interestingly is speaking with them and learning about the things that they're making, basically just talking shop and talking through all of the projects that they had in mind for all these various slabs. Alan kind of works with the slabs more like I do, where he looks at the piece of wood as a nice big piece that he can cut all his furniture parts out of and be able to lay out those parts not just on the face but also in the thickness and work in 3 dimensions. That's the really nice thing about working with slabs in the furniture realm, is that you can do a lot more with grain flow and grain continuity and all kinds of fun things like that. You can even rotate your piece in the stock itself to change the grain orientation of that part in case you don't like the grain or you want to adjust the way the grain looks a little bit. You can rotate that part in the slab, cut it at a bias essentially, and then you have a part that has the grain that you're actually looking for that particular area. Wink, on the other hand, does more, let's say, horizontal surfaces, tables and things like that. So one of these 14-foot slabs for him is going to be a table that he has a commission for. And another project that he has lined up is for a custom set of stairs where every stair tread is a different species of wood, which I think is just a super cool idea. This second log that I'm digging through is elm, and I cut this in the video Short Logs Long Weekend. I think 4 of these are going to be going off to Alan and Wink, and then I will also pull a couple of these out as well for some filler for the kiln. Now I'm going to head off and get the last thing for this order, which is a slab of that live oak that I cut that Phil brought me all the way from Mississippi. I wasn't planning on selling any of these, but Wink's project of the staircase really spoke to me. So I am going to be sending off one of these to him to turn into a stair tread. I'm also going to pull almost all of them out just in case there's room in the kiln. That's one of the things about this is there is filler there. Eric has a bunch of stuff that's already dried of different thicknesses that we can put in there to fill any dead space. But what's the point of doing that if I could just bring something with me that needs to be dried and I can actually utilize more of the actual kiln space and dry more things instead of just putting stuff in there that doesn't really add any benefit. And I've done this enough times now where I kind of have a good idea of how much stuff I'm going to need to bring with me. And I always tend to bring what I think is more than enough, and it always ends up being a lot closer than I was expecting. Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. It's September 12th. It's a beautiful morning here. I'm going to throw all the small stuff into the back of the truck because that's easier, because then I don't have to tie anything down. Just throw it in there and go. So that's it. Load up and get the heck out of here. There go the geese. You talking again? You're always talking. As soon as the camera comes on, he starts talking. I know you do.
I'll tell you.
So first thing on the to-do list is going to be to actually empty the kiln. This is a load of 6-inch thick silver maple that Eric sourced and dried for me for workbench kits. None of the logs that got sawn into these blocks were big enough to do the quarter sawn bench tops. I think the biggest one was only 28 inches in diameter, and the minimum size I need to do the quarter sawn bench tops is a 36-inch diameter log, and it needs to be pretty darn straight at only 36 inches diameter to be able to pull those bench tops out of it. And those have been much more difficult to find than I had hoped and anticipated when I started producing those kits. So most of this stuff is too narrow for a single slab bench top, or single slab half bench top, I guess, for the split top Rubo. There are a few that are wide enough, but of course these are all going to be plain sawn. A couple of years ago, I experimented with cutting some plain sawn bench tops just to see how they would do over time. I had them dried the same way as the quarter sawn ones, and those plain sawn ones haven't really distorted or warped. Even in the drying process, they didn't really move or warp at all, and they have stayed very consistent over the last couple of years I've had them. And I think this is mostly due to the fact that they're so darn thick and that they're actually dried. There's so much material there, there's so much mass that they have this moisture buffer, essentially. It's almost like the concept of thermal mass. And that's why I think that the seasonal changes don't seem to be affecting them at all. For instance, in the summer, when it's more damp and there's more moisture in the air, these bench tops will start picking up moisture, but they're so thick that that moisture doesn't really penetrate that deeply into the wood until it becomes the next season, the winter, and things start to dry out again. And that little bit of moisture that penetrated maybe a half inch, 3/4 of an inch, if that, into that piece of wood starts coming back out again. It's just really interesting to me how the moisture affects these pieces of wood because they are so big and so thick. It's totally different than your normal thickness of wood. These thicker ones are much more resistive to moisture changes, which once they're dry is good, but getting them dry, that's why it's so much more difficult to actually dry these bigger pieces. That full load is pretty close to 1,000 board feet of material. Like I said, only a few of them are wide enough to do a pair of split top Rubo bench tops. The rest of it will either be resawn into base material, or for those that are interested in a single slab workbench top, 3 of them can be glued together to produce a standard width bench top. So we'll shuffle these trailers and get going on the new stuff that I just brought over. That's filler.
Okay.
This one's filler.
Okay.
And then there's one piece of filler in there.
Yeah, we'll be way short probably, so.
I don't know. I wasn't too sure because, like, these are going to take a 1 layer apiece.
Sure.
So that's 2 layers in itself.
Fair
So
enough.
then this one can get chopped to whatever to fill.
Right.
How's your lift?
We're gonna find out in a minute.
That ain't no small piece. That looks a lot bigger on the trailer, by the way.
Get it up on the lip. Turn and get it up on the lip.
Alrighty, that actually works. Now let's use it. Service. Got it?
Oh, look at that.
Will that work?
Almost like you planned it.
There was no plan.
Let's
Just luck.
see what we got. 15. 14. Now these would be a piece of cake to dry.
I like to bring you, easy stuff every now and then.
Yeah. 6 inch.
That's not bad. That's under a year. I cut these in October.
It's really good.
It looks ridiculous in here.
It is. It's bigger. It's bigger than you think it is.
I have done a video with Eric in the past talking about the kiln, and I will leave you a link to that. He does a nice job of explaining the costs and benefits of the machine, all the intricacies, and all that stuff of actually operating one of these things. But I'll run through how the machine works real quick for those who haven't seen that video. The wood is loaded into this tub type thing, and these aluminum plates are placed in between. The machine has a rubber membrane lid that gets put on top of the stack when it's all filled up. Vacuum is applied to the chamber, and that vacuum is going to lower the boiling point of water, causing the moisture in the wood to leave much more quickly and much more readily than other methods. Now, since the wood is under vacuum, air can't be used to introduce any heat to the stack. So to actually heat the stack, that's what the aluminum plates are for. They're hollow and hot water is pumped through them, and that heat will transfer directly into the wood, heating it and causing the moisture to come out of the wood. So one big benefit of the vacuum kiln is the faster dry time, but the other huge benefit of this machine in particular is that the lid, being a rubber membrane, will collapse and press the whole stack down into the bottom of the chamber when it's under vacuum and the machine is actually running, drying the wood. This puts a huge amount of uniform pressure on the stack and holds these slabs and wood or whatever you put in here perfectly flat the whole time it's drying. And that's a really nice, huge plus because you end up with a lot less waste due to warpage, either pieces you can't use altogether because they're too distorted, or when it comes to surfacing, if you want to use a whole piece, you'll have less waste due to surfacing to get that piece into flat. Eric likes to let the machine warm up and run for a few hours. That allows him to make sure that everything is being heated correctly. Sometimes you can end up with an airlock in one of the plates. You kind of want to know that before you put the lid on and run a cycle, because your wood's going to come out wet. And you're wondering why this whole row didn't dry at all? Well, because it wasn't being heated, because there's no water flowing through the plate. So here's some stock footage of the only time I've been there when Eric has closed the lid and started the machine. I think this time I went to lunch while I was warming up or something, but the lid just rolls over, it drops down, and then as the vacuum is applied, that membrane will start to collapse and push on the entire stack, forcing it down to the bottom of the chamber. Can you pop me a bag of popcorn while you're at it?
Start sucking our way right down.
I'm going to head home and unload the workbench stuff, and we'll be back here in a few days. Good morning, happy Monday, September 16th. It was 6 days since I went and dropped off that load. Going to go pick it up this morning, and I am bringing some more stuff. Well, sort of. I cut a log for Eric back in March, and he never came to pick it up yet. So I'm going to bring it over so he can put it in the vacuum kiln and get that dried for his stuff too. So I got to go get that pulled out. That stack has been chilling in that horse shelter thing over there.
You know, you think, you just look at me like, God, they're only 4 foot. It shouldn't be that heavy.
Shouldn't be that bad.
No.
It's like the whole thing.
It's big. Thank goodness we got Mr. Yellow here to help.
The lifter guy.
Good?
Yep.
You missed that hose.
After the house.
Snap.
Oh,
All right. I thought I had it disconnected.
I thought that one felt a little heavier.
Yeah. It's okay. Spin it your way.
Sure.
No deals.
Yeah. So easy. Just spin it around.
Put it in there, for goodness sake.
I guess that worked. How many of you have already posted a comment asking when I'm going to get one of these things? I'll go ahead and answer that now as we're loading these walnut slabs, and you don't have to go back and delete your comment. I've already seen it. So the short answer is it would be cool to have one of these things, but at this point, I don't really have a business that will support keeping one of these things busy enough to justify the outlay of capital. So just to, I guess, throw some numbers around here, to get one of these, a similar size plate style vacuum kiln, I'd be looking at around $150,000 of an initial investment. Of course, you can get bigger ones and spend more money, or you can get less expensive ones and not have the plates. But in my opinion, the plate style is what really makes these things a game changer. The drying speed is great, but those plates and the speed that gives you on top of a normal vacuum kiln, on top of any other kind of drying style, the flatness that's there because of those plates, I have been spoiled by this vacuum kiln that Eric has, so I wouldn't really have any desire to get anything less than what this thing is. The cycle time on this machine can obviously vary depending on how wet the lumber is going into it, what thickness it is, etc. But I guess a general number we can throw at it is 1 cycle a week. For example, this one we're doing here was like 4 days. It ended over the weekend, and then we just got to it on a Monday. But we'll say a week, so that's 52 loads a year that this machine would be able to handle. And for $150,000, you're not really going to want to let this thing sit idle for very long. So currently with the workbench kits, which take 3 weeks to dry, I'm really only keeping this machine busy for 4 weeks a year. So that still leaves 48 more cycles that a machine would need to be able to running for. And I don't sell enough or even saw enough lumber to dry or have the need to dry that much stuff. The other option, of course, would be to start a lumber drying business. And that's still a lot of demand to fill in order to keep that machine busy and really, get your money back on the initial investment. So as cool as it would be to have my own at this point, it's probably going to be a little while until it makes financial sense for me to do so. And I think I would still miss going to see Eric. We would need to find something else to do together so that we could hang out and talk and just do stuff. We're both busy people, and this is a good excuse for us to get together and catch up. So, I don't know. Maybe we'd have to find some other thing to spend time together doing besides building my barn. It's been about a month, and Alan and Wink are ready to receive the shipment, so I'm going to get these slabs out of here. How this is going to work on the receiving end is that they're going to pick up this shipment at the freight terminal. They will drive the pallet of slabs to Alan's. They will unload Alan's slabs, and then the pallet will continue on to Wink. So I want to try and get these things organized a little bit for these guys so they don't have to move and maneuver things around excessively. So I'm going to put all of Wink's stuff on the bottom, at least the bigger, longer slabs, and then have Alan's on top. They'll be offloading all this by hand, so if I can make this a little bit easier for them, I certainly will. The shorter ones I'll stack on top since they're pretty easy to move with 2 people, but those bigger ones, I don't really want them having to move around twice. So I'll get everything separated out and sorted and start loading those bigger slabs for Wink on the bottom. I have a couple of slabs that were previously dried for Wink last fall. and we decided not to send those with the previous load because they were on the longer side. These red oak slabs are, I think they're 12'6", and the second longest stuff in the previous pallet was 10'6". So we figured we hang on to these and send them with this longer load now than paying for the extra length for 2 slabs on their previous shipment. So those will go into the stack, and then Alan's longer slabs will go on top of that, and then I will stack the shorter ones on top towards one end. This shipment will have to be end picked in order to be loaded into a truck, so I'm going to bias some weight to one end so that it balances out on the forks a little bit easier. And now that I have the final dimensions and weight for this thing, I can book it to actually go out on a truck. And I'll tell you what, they really get you on this extra long, oversized stuff because it was significantly more than the previous pallet that I sent to these guys, which weighed more and was taller, but 4 feet shorter. So this one ended up costing double, $2,600 to send to them. The previous pallet was 10'6". This one was 14'6", and the previous one was a little over 6 feet tall. This one was, I think, like 4 and change tall. Same width on both of them. And the previous one was heavier at 3,000 pounds. That one came in at $1,300. And that's from Minneapolis to the Bay Area in California. The other kind of fun thing about this is that with the longer stuff, there are fewer carriers who are actually interested in taking the load. So I use a 3PL, that's a third-party logistics company, and that's basically like collective bargaining. If you're going to go directly to just a single freight carrier, they're going to charge you full price for whatever their full price rate is for that freight, for that distance, destination to destination. With a 3PL, you get to essentially enjoy the rates that a volume buyer gets because your shipment, along with however many other customers they have, their shipments get lumped into the negotiations to get those rates. So you get a much better rate. And normally when I go out and get rates for shipments like these, I'll get rates back from 6 to 8 different carriers. This time, I only got rates back from 2. And the normal preferred carriers that I use weren't included in those 2. Now, fortunately, the carrier that I ended up using for this load and the driver was super nice and it went really smoothly. But on my end, that's kind of the biggest thing that I have with the whole freight shipment thing. Is finding the carriers that are the easiest to work with on the pickup side, the ones that actually show up and give you a call ahead of time to let you know that they are, they're on their way, and I can let them know that I'll meet them down at the end of the driveway with a forklift, and I will load the pallet for them. Back when I was at the warehouse space, I had a loading dock there, and that was a little bit more convenient for outgoing freight shipments. I could leave the pallet at the dock, and then the driver would just show up whenever. They would load the pallet themselves with their pallet jack and just leave me my paperwork after they were done. I didn't have to interact with them at all. I didn't have to help them load anything. I didn't have to be there when they were there collecting the freight load. Shipping from my home now is a little more inconvenient for me because I actually have to be there. I have to load the driver. I don't have a loading dock for them to do this themselves. And a lot of the stuff I ship will not fit on a loading gate, so it needs to be loaded by me with a forklift into their truck. And in the few years I've been doing this from my home, I've learned which freight carriers are the easiest to work with for me, who will give me a call ahead of time, and will make the process super easy for me. And they're always super happy and super surprised that I show up at the end of the driveway with a telehandler. They were expecting maybe a small skid steer or something like that. And a lot of the times I'm able to put my pallet wherever it needs to go on their truck to make the rest of the day a lot easier. So in this case, with this shipment, the driver had another pallet to go pick up. So I put this one all the way to the front of the truck, all the way to one side, so they could get his pallet jack around my pallet and get out into the back of the truck and load his next shipment behind mine. So that's the general process of going from a slab out in the yard to a fully dried piece of material that's headed off to a customer. The last thing I'm doing here is heading back to the barn to get another shipment which was heading out that day. This is a workbench kit that was heading out to Texas, and the driver never showed up for this one. So that's generally what I mean. You can be ready to go with your shipment, waiting on the driver, and then they never actually come and collect that shipment, even though they had scheduled them for that day. So that is going to do it for this one. Thank you as always for watching. I greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments on slab stuff, please feel free to leave me a comment. As always, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And until next time, happy woodworking.